Hey guys, hope you're all having a great Halloween season. So this year I really wanted to make a Halloween themed review, and although at first I didn't know what to do it on, I then learned about the history of Universal's monster horror movie era in the 1930s and knew that this would be what I'd do my video on. I'd actually learned about the history of it in my film studies class recently, which I'll get more into later, and I just bought the set a few days after. Because there's 6 in here, I plan to make a review of all of these each Halloween, so subscribe if you want to see the next one next year. Alright, so that being said, let's get into the first one that I watched, which is Dracula, released in 1931. So right off the bat, you can tell that the movie was made in the 30s. The characters all fit tropes from the time period, and everything from the mural sets to the intro credits is really fun to see. So the movie opens up to a carriage traveling through the mountains. It arrives in a little town, and this dumb American gets out and has to continue up to Dracula's castle. Everyone tells him that he's being a dumb American, but he insists that he must go. This scene is full of foreigner tropes. The woman who doesn't speak English doing the cross thing, whatever. The village people who discourage and even cry for those who are stupid enough to go. This opening scene is pretty weird, since not only do they let him go, they give him a cross to take with him to protect him from Dracula. So once he somehow gets someone to take him, he starts to realize that the driver may or may not be human, since he literally transforms into a bat at one point. But this dude's like, huh, it's a little weird. Something you realize about this movie at this point is that you have no idea why this guy needs to go to Dracula's castle. Is he a relative? Has he been banished to his castle? Who knows? The movie isn't going to tell you. So we finally get to the castle and we see Dracula emerge from his wooden box, and then we see these weird women. They don't know. And then you realize at this point that this movie is a little too dramatic, but it kind of works to its advantage. Like, it takes itself seriously, but everything from the cinematography and the acting from start to finish are so freaking extra at times, it becomes a little comedic.
Don't. Not her.
So once the dumb American has arrived, you learn that he is here because he's selling property to Dracula in London. Yeah, this movie is just getting started. So then he gets a paper cut and Drac's spidey sense goes off, but then the power of Christ compels him not to. But he ends up just poisoning him and the girls eat him, no big deal. So now we're on a ship sailing to Great Britain. But then we learn now that Dracula has made the dumb American into a human doormat who is now his servant. Are you guys just as confused as I am? You should be, because this is about all I got from the movie too. Then we are shown newspaper reports of a ship that has arrived to London, and the only surviving passenger is the doormat, who according to the article, eats small animals for blood, puzzles scientists. But this scene here with the doormat looking up and laughing genuinely made me scared, and it's the only one in the entire movie that does so. So kudos to the movie, +1. Alright, so the rest of the movie takes place in London. Drac buys a fixer-upper and still attacking people and sucking their blood to preserve his power, and the doormat was taken into a local psychiatrist to be rehabilitated. We're also introduced to the targets of Dracula, these 2 white privileged rich people who live right next door. If you thought you'd be seeing people of color in this movie, yeah, no, it's a movie in the 1930s, think again. So I'm not going to walk through the next chunk of the movie, it gets pretty predictable, plus most of the plot is just making people dumb because the plot needs them to be. So Dracula meets the neighbors next door and starts to befriend them, but it's the most awkward interaction I've literally ever seen in a movie.
Pass a cup to the dead already. Hurrah for the next to die. Oh, never mind the rest, dear.
To die. To be really dead. That must be glorious.
Like, who talks to people like that? It's like you want them to know that you're not human. So at this point, as well as the rest of the movie, I was pretty much entirely lost. The movie never explains why Dracula comes to London or what he's doing there, other than to have more victims for blood, but then you remember that he had that before since the villagers talked about how many people never came back. The movie also gives us some new ability for Drac. He can perform Jedi mind tricks just by looking at them with this stare. And not only can he control them, but he can fully possess them and do whatever he wants, which is just a little bit ridiculous.
You don't need to see his identification.
He can not only change into a bat, but a freaking wolf also. Which, because this is a low-budget 30s movie, we never see him become one on screen.
What's that? Running across the lawn. Looks like a huge dog. Or a wolf?
So the movie at this point basically completely devolves into a typical 30s romance drama. Miss White Privilege becomes possessed by Drac for a reason that we never learn, and he keeps having these late night meetings where he brainwashed her more, but they decide to put up Wolfsbane, so that's no match for Drac, who can just Jedi mind trick someone to open the door and let him in. And dude, why haven't you called the police yet? You're letting a vampire near your daughter. So this is my favorite character by far during the final portion, is the doormat. Doormat is somehow able to escape the facility he's been kept in like 5 times, and the guards are like, whoops, our bad, well, better go find him. But every time he escapes, he goes to White Privilege's house just to act like a ghoul and just laugh at everyone. Every time he's asked a question, he just looks at them like, y'all are screwed, Drac is powerful, and then just laughs at them like an internet troll. It's hilarious. But the movie doesn't make everyone stupid, and this is kind of where the plot actually starts to come together. The film puts all of its competence into one character, Dr. I don't remember his name actually, so we're just gonna call him Doctor. This guy comes in, and in like 2 seconds, he's like, guys, he's obviously a vampire, and shows them how there's no reflection. It's Dracula with this mirror, and Dracula's like, oh, you found me. Like it's an episode of Undercover Boss. It's so strange. So believe it or not, this film's actually almost over. Now, to be fair, with a relatively short runtime of 74 minutes, it has performed admirably for a low-effort 30s movie. I mean, I still would have liked some more context, plot, or character development, but this is a horror movie, so I guess I'm gonna have to let that go, aren't I? Alright, fine, whatever. So finally, we're at the end of the movie, and it plays out just like a typical horror movie, although this was probably pioneering and perhaps the first one to do so, so I'm not gonna give it too much crap. So Drac kidnaps Miss Privilege and brings her into his basement in the enormous house where he's been sleeping. Like, literally, he bought a whole house, but is only in the basement. So Mr. Privilege and the Doctor go to... sounds like Doctor Who, sorry. So Mr. Privilege and Doctor go to search for her. Doctor stabs Drac with a wooden spear, and Mr. and Mrs. White Privilege are reunited, and all is well. Now, did I like this movie? I would say yes, purely because of its historical significance. Like I mentioned earlier, I recently learned about the golden age of Hollywood and how studios have developed what they call a house style during this era. Each studio not only had full ownership and control over everything from the production backlots where they were filmed to the theaters that they were screened in, each studio specialized in one specific genre, and referred now to as house style. Each studio did this. MGM specialized in the prestige movie, no, not that prestige, stuff like this and this. They specialized in the high-class, wealthy lifestyle, like Great Gatsby-esque films. And Universal specialized in the horror and monster genre. This was done so not only because films could be made easier, since everyone had experience in what made those movies good within each studio, but sticking to a genre meant that no one else was making them anyway, which meant that they were kind of guaranteed box office sales, which is pretty genius for the time. Especially because this was done during the Great Depression, and a lot of companies were struggling financially. So now on the surface level, do I like this movie? It's hard with a movie like this, since it probably pioneered a lot of things that we see so often in films, especially horror, that isn't a novelty anymore. But in any case, it was a really cool movie to watch. The muraled set pieces actually looked really cool, which I didn't really mention, even today, and the cinematography was surprisingly effective, and was probably the best part of the entire movie for me. And even the little things were really good too, like where Drac is staring at someone and there's lights focused on his eyes to make it seem unnatural. It was actually really effective. If I had to nitpick, I would say the plot and the music are definitely this film's weak points. Because this movie was released in the 1930s, I thought it'd have a really cool soundtrack, but a lot of scenes were just quiet, which was kinda lame. I also expected the screenplay to be really good, since Dracula is a pretty well-known graphic novel. It's been around for like centuries, and this movie was made in the same era as this. But it was a little disappointing, even looking past the glaring pop points like I already mentioned. But in any rate, in terms of Halloween movies, I would definitely recommend this if you want something to watch that's new this Halloween. And I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. It was enjoyable. Well guys, thanks for watching this video, those who actually do. I'm going to actually work on the next ones for this throughout the year and upload them. So if I make a COVID reference in the next few years with these videos, you'll know why. Anyway, I'm back in classes, so I don't know if I'll have time to make videos again, so happy holidays, and stay safe, don't be coughing on anyone. That's it. That's it right there. Boom. Got it.
Butt scratcher!
Butt scratcher!
Butt scratcher!
Butt scratcher!
Miss Weston?
How do you do?
How do you do? How do you do? How do you do?
Tommy, how's the peeping?
I was telling her some rather grim tales of my far-off country.
Get away from my wife! No one talk to my wife!